The XFL 3.0 Championship game playing in San Antonio, a city with quite the background in alt football history. And there were a lot of dubious outdoor and indoor leagues that called San Antonio home, but here's some of the more interesting attempts at alt football in the Alamo City. And thanks to commenter BrownStar38 for the idea. The San Antonio Toros started off as a semi-pro team in 1967, but stepped up to the Continental Football League in 1969. According to San Antonio Business Journal reporter W. Scott Bailey, the Toros captured a lot of fans and even filled up Alamo Stadium. Bailey says the ratings of the local broadcasts rivaled the NFL's Dallas Cowboys and Houston Oilers. The Toros appeared in the Continental Football League's final championship game, a 44-38 loss to the Indianapolis Capitals. The league folded in 1970, but the Toros did not. The ownership formed the Trans-American Football Conference, and in 1971 became the first league to play its games in the spring. Another league folding could not stop the Toros when the Trans-American League called it quits. The Toros moved on to the Southwest Professional Football League for 2 seasons, appearing in the 1973 title game, a 1916 loss to the Oklahoma City Wranglers in what was the final game for the Toros franchise as a full-fledged pro team. What better name for a team in a fly-by-night league like the World Football League than the Wings? In fact, the team flew in from Florida when the Blazers folded after the 1974 season. While the Wings were technically an expansion team in the WFL, it was made up of 16 former Florida Blazers. The team kicked off in a half-full, maybe, Alamo Stadium with a 27-10 win over the Charlotte Hornets in July of 1975. The Wings played their last game in October of that year as the WFL folded. The Wings finished with an interesting 7-6 record. They won all of their home games and lost all of their road games. In 1984 and 1985, the USFL's San Antonio Gunslingers played at Alamo Stadium in front of a lot of empty chairs. The team infamously added a bunch of folding chairs near the field to officially increase the capacity to meet USFL attendance standards. The USFL was desperate to add rich owners to the league and always said it did its due diligence to check the finances of the owners, but like the debacle in LA, you can check out my other video on that, the league failed to do so, and Clinton Mangus, an oil tycoon, ended up owning the San Antonio franchise. Mangus paid for expenses out of pocket, and after already being on shaky financial ground, his fortune collapsed, and with it, the fortunes of the Gunslingers did too. Players' paychecks bounced, and the team finished up the 1985 season basically playing for free when Mangus walked away from the team. The Gunslingers wrapped up their 2 years in the USFL with a 12-24 record. Hall of Famer Tom Landry and his son were the general managers of the San Antonio Riders of the World League of American Football. The team had some other NFL connections as well. Mike Riley, the head coach, later was the head coach of the San Diego Chargers, and Riders quarterback Jason Garrett eventually entered the NFL as both a player and then later the head coach for the Dallas Cowboys. The Riders played at Alamo Stadium in 1991, which owner Larry Benson planned to renovate at a cost of $235,000 until the school district, which had say over the stadium, refused to allow alcohol sales during the Riders' games. The ownership group opted to bounce after that decision and the decision of the school district to increase the rental rates for the 1992 season. The Riders relocated to Bobcat Stadium, home of Texas State, for the 1992 campaign. San Antonio's foray into the WLAF ended with an 11-9 record, and then the Riders folded when the league folded, but did live on in a couple of roundabout ways a couple of years later. When the WLAF folded, the Riders' ownership applied to be part of the Canadian Football League's expansion experiment. Since there was already a Riders and a Rough Riders in the CFL, they chose the name the Texans. However, in 1993, the team folded, but when in 1995 the CFL's Sacramento Gold Miners relocated to San Antonio, they took on the Texans moniker. They played a single season in the Alamo Dome to respectable crowds and ended with a 12-6 record. Mike Riley was back at San Antonio spring football as head coach of the Alliance of American Football's San Antonio Commanders. The Commanders drew an average of more than 27,000 fans at its 4 games in the Alamo Dome. Former Dallas Cowboy Daryl Johnston was the Commanders' GM. The Commanders sat at 5-3 and tied atop the Western Conference standings when on April 2nd, 2019, while the team was at practice, the AAF announced the league was DOA. The Alamo Dome played host to the Spring League the following year, which actually played in the fall because of COVID. San Antonio's most recent entry into alt football, the XFL 3.0 Brahmas, which finished the 2023 season 3-7, but was alive for the playoffs until the final kick of the season. Led by head coach Hines Ward, the Brahmas brought spring football back to the Alamo Dome with an average attendance of nearly 15,000 fans per home game, second in the XFL. If you like alt football news and history, hit subscribe and check out more of my content right here on this channel.